Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Rich Dalton, welcome back to the Center of the Universe. This is your third time on Stories from the Center of the Universe. And I just have to say, you've connected me to a couple of really cool folks. I'll start with Clint. Clint's led me to a nephew that's done incredible things. He's going to connect me to some other folks that I'm just fascinated by. But I'm still fascinated by Clint. What an amazing guy. He was the first person you connected me to. And I'm like, I don't think it gets much better than Clint. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah. Clint is my mentor in so many different ways, in so many different life. Clint's an amazing man. I love that man. And he, just so many different aspects. He's changed my life.
Yeah. He's the kind of guy that if you surrounded yourself with people like Clint, you'd be
oh gosh,
in shape, right?
I'd be on top of the world.
Yeah. And then the other person you connected me to was Joey Beltran. And Joey, I was very happy at the end. He said, "Hey, that was a lot of fun." Or he said, "That was fun." And when I brought up Joey before we started recording, you said something that I was like, "Holy cow, tell me more." And you're like, that's his story to tell. But I think at a high level, you can tell me about the thing you said before we recorded.
Yeah, Joey's another man I absolutely love. Was one of my main MMA training partners for many years. And he honestly he saved my life. He played a huge role in saving my life. If it wasn't for him, I don't know if but he helped me figure out how to get into rehab and kind of walk me through that process with knowledge that he had. And if it wasn't for him, like I said, maybe I would have still gotten to rehab, but who knows how much longer it would have been.
Yeah. So you have a soft spot in your heart for both of those guys.
Oh, yes, without a doubt.
Yeah. And I got a chance to talk to him because of you, and I absolutely enjoyed both conversations. And I wish them nothing but the best, just like I wish you nothing but the best. All right. So just to do a high level recap of the first couple of episodes we did together. You lived in a few different places in the U.S. At one point, you end up with your mom and your sibling, a sister, right?
Yes.
My wife was really good friends with your cousin Sharon, and I guess it was Sharon's idea. Like Paul should have Rich on the podcast, and so that's our connection. You graduate from school, you end up spending a little bit of time in college, but you also did the Marines as a younger man, canine police officer. You wrestled for a good chunk of your older childhood into your 20s. You're still involved in wrestling to some degree today, but you've also done a lot of martial arts that led to you doing MMA. Look, I played football in high school. You did too, Rich. It takes a certain mindset to play football at any level, I think. Especially the higher you go, obviously,
yeah.
It takes a special mindset. But I think you have to have a stronger mindset to wrestle. And I hate to admit that because I never wrestled, and I used to give wrestlers grief for being shorter than me. But to do MMA is a special level of toughness that I can only imagine. I can't really fathom. And you did that for a while, and so you're definitely one of the tougher people on earth for having done that. Then you obviously there's marriage. You have a couple kids. You end up being a DOD police officer out in California. You were at 29 Palms, I think.
Camp Pendleton.
Pendleton, sorry. And then you run into some addiction challenges, and I think that's mostly what we're going to talk about today. Sort of this journey through really bad spots in your life, man. And you know it better than I do. I'd love for the audience to get some detail that you feel comfortable talking about as it relates to being in and out of addiction, and then to the place you've landed and you've been in for a while now, and you feel like you will never go back to those bad places because you figured out how to live a life where your mental health has never been stronger, and it's so strong you can't imagine a life where you go back to those dark places. So before we get into all that, one thing that I wished I had talked about, I think in the last episode, and it's a weird thing to bring up, based on what I just said, but I need to check this box. Tell me the Lyme disease part of your story.
So while I was in my second rehab, I just got put on Suboxone, which is a medication to help you get off of opiates, all while it's another opiate. So I just gotten on thyroid medication again because I had been diagnosed with hypothyroidism probably 10 years prior. And so I started getting really, really fatigued to the point where I was sleeping 9-10 hours a night, still exhausted, falling asleep, standing up, talking to people, like just dozing off in the middle of conversations, getting kicked out of a meditation class for dozing off and snoring. The VA got me a job, for 4 hours. I'd check in and then 20 minutes later, I was trying to find a spot to sit down and close my eyes for 10, 20 minutes, just to, or 5 minutes just to and I didn't know what it was. So I go to my doctor and she does some tests, and that happened to be something that was her expertise. She brought it up for my initial check. And I don't know if she forgot to check that, to test me on that, or if it came back negative, but yeah. So then after, I don't know, maybe a couple days, she comes back. Oh, I got the results. And I jokingly said, oh, is it cancer? And she's like, no, it's Lyme, and with a big smile on her face. And I think that's because she knew how to treat it. But yeah, that was, I think that played a big part in my role with my mental health and my depression and everything else that was going on in my life. But yeah, that fatigue. And like you pointed out, I've been a Marine, a cop. I know fatigue. There's been plenty of times where I spent many hours, or many days, not sleeping and working, a lot. And this was another level.
And you had probably had it for, it sounds like a few weeks.
Few months, maybe years. I assumed I got it when I got out there and got bit by a tick, in the grass. But, I have some different theories on Lyme, is, just because it's one of those that there's no distinct test for it. They're just looking for markers. And I think those because everybody I've met with Lyme also has some severe mental health issues. And so it makes me wonder which came first.
Yeah. You'll probably never know. Right.
Yeah.
There's no, you can make some educated guesses, but you could probably drive yourself crazy.
Exactly. Yeah.
I knew a guy that when I was in the Army, we were out in Missouri somewhere, and he got Lyme disease, and he had these really weird concentric circles on his back. And I don't know that that's from the bite location, or if that's one of the symptoms that some people get when they get Lyme disease, but they knew almost immediately what the problem was. And he was completely out. Like he was conscious, but he could not move. It was the most exhausting thing he said he could ever possibly imagine. And that's when they caught it early. You were living with it for who knows how long.
Yeah. And that was my theory, is that they caught it early. They put me on antibiotics immediately. She went a little bit heavier than she normally does as far as the dosage wise. And on top of that, not only was I trying to, take care of that, I was also trying to heal from all these mental health things as well as addictions to drugs. And so I think it all coincided perfectly with me healing. And as I was just trying to focus on my health and wellness. And then, slowly all the symptoms of that and many of my other diseases started slowly going away.
Yeah, it's like I said before, impossible to tease apart what was impacting you when. So I think I want to start with this notion of throughout your life, before addiction, during addiction, what were some of your mental health challenges? You mentioned depression, but what were your other challenges? And we can talk at length about your depression as well.
So I think I was probably depressed, from, I think around fourth grade. My dad shot himself when I was 6. And then my mom never told me the truth until I was in fourth grade. And we'd moved. That was the third or fourth time we moved. And I kind of just realized this, as I was, self-reflecting, that we were kind of homeless for about a year. We lived with my aunt. We moved in with some family friends, moved back in with my aunt, lived with somebody else. and bounced around in Florida for a bit after moving from Massachusetts. And then that's when we eventually moved back to Jersey when I was in 5th grade and moved in with my aunt and Sharon and Michelle, my cousins. And so I think that's when it kind of started. I remember a lot of the red flags, coming straight home, eating food, snacking a lot, kind of pulling back. I started gaining weight in 4th grade and 5th grade. And honestly, that's when I think my addiction started, which was to food, which, I wouldn't have considered that an addiction at the time, but obviously it continued on and I had weight issues for the rest of my life. And I was constantly told, and my mom was constantly told, and everybody else was constantly told, oh, he's just an angry kid. His dad died. He's just angry. He's just angry. So that's what I lived with. And I thought for the next 15, 20, 25 years, the idea of me being depressed, or having PTSD, heck no, I didn't think that. But looking back, I've been diagnosed with PTSD, with depression. As far as the symptoms go, I had all the symptoms for ADHD, for, even bipolar disorder and many other things, without being diagnosed with them. Just many days on top of the world, and then can't get out of my bed for the next 2 or 3 days. And that went up and down most of my life since 5th grade. 5th grade is when I started thinking about suicide and killing myself. I started cutting a little bit, mostly on my arm where it couldn't really be seen. And I think I was just screaming for attention. I used to bang my head against the wall, break things, punch the wall, put holes in my door. I was just I had a lot of anger inside me. And once I went in the Marine Corps, I didn't want to admit that then, nor did I know what to admit. I never wanted to put in any kind of diagnosis for PTSD because I didn't want to lose my job as a Marine. I didn't want to lose the opportunity of becoming a cop. I didn't want to lose the opportunity of being a father. There was just a lot of fear to ever admit to any of that or to get any help for any of it.
And so it sounds like at some point in your life, and knowing your story decently relative to the common man, you started to mature in a way that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable.
Now, yes. Oh, now I'm an open book, and as I hope to share on this podcast here, I want to open up I want to open the closet up and let all the skeletons out, of everything in my life, and that's not for me because I've already healed all that, but it's more so that I can share with other people, because I know there's people that have gone through some of the dark moments that I went through and know and need to know that there's a way out. And like you brought up before, the reason why I don't think I'll ever go back to those dark ways is because now I have the keys and the map. So even if I ever was to, I know how to get out of it.
Yeah. So your comment about not being able to get out of bed for 2 or 3 days, or you'd have fits of rage that you just chalked up to anger, like those had to be confusing times for you, whether you were 35 years old or 12 years old. That had to be really confusing. Like you felt bad, whether it was anger or depression or both. And I imagine it was triply frustrating because you had no idea what was causing it.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I brutalized people. That's not a good word. I terrorized people. My mom, my sister, my aunts, my cousins, my ex-wife. And that's something that's, I still really am coming to grips with because of that. I'm sure the saying, misery loves company. And that was me. I love my mom to death. I have nothing but wonderful, amazing things. She tried so hard. I know she did. I watched her, and I have nothing. But I think because of what she went through with my father and everything like that, she tried to step up to be my father or this masculine figure. And all while doing that, I think she kind of left the feminine or motherly side. So, and she really didn't know how to do either. And so I don't really remember being hugged or held or told I love you. And I'm not saying these things didn't happen. I just don't remember them. And so to me, it was, if it did happen, it wasn't a significant part of my upbringing. I don't really remember hugging or telling my mom I love her until I was 18 when I went off the Marine Corps. And that was because I was, scared. But prior to that, you're right. I was confused. I didn't understand. And I remember 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade thinking, why me? Why me? why am I the only, I didn't know anybody else whose dad committed suicide. I didn't know I only know I didn't know anybody else whose dad died. A couple of my friends had, came from broken homes as well. And that's why I think we, became friends, but I didn't know it. And so in my mind, I'm the only one who doesn't have a father. I'm the only one whose father committed suicide. Well, that victim mentality. And that was all I knew.
Yeah, and victim mentality. And look, we all feel like the victim when things don't go our way. I think the trick is figuring out how to get out of that mindset as quickly as possible so you get to a position of strength, because being in that position of strength certainly feels a whole lot better.
Oh, yes. Oh, wow, yes.
All right, so you were look, you weren't a perfect kid growing up. You may or may not have been a model Marine. I assume you were a good Marine. Drugs was something that you're like, that's what other people do. That's what people that can't be responsible or accountable for their own actions. Other people do that. I'm not one of those people.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about when your addiction to drugs, and you've talked about, you mentioned it on this one, addiction to food, addiction to sex, addiction to all kinds of fun things.
Man.
I really, and we can go wherever you want to go, Rich, but I really want to talk about addiction to drugs, because there are so many people in this country and across the globe that suffer from addiction to various drugs. Some of them are prescribed, some are illegal. There's been a debate in this country for a long time about maybe everything should be legal or everything should be regulated and everything in between. But when did you first begin the journey of addiction?
So to go back to what you just said, yeah, I hated people. I judged the heck out of people that did drugs. I thought they were disgusting. Heck, people that smoked weed, I thought they were potheads and losers. And that's, the programming that I took on, especially going the routes that I always played sports. I was always being tested, being a Marine, a cop, I was always being tested. And those were the people I hung around. I'd smoked weed twice to impress some girls when I was 18. I think I took 1 or 2 hits. I think I tried it a handful of times in my 20s, and then, and nothing else. And then, I think I was about 32 or 33. I had a deep cut on my shin, and they prescribed me some Vicodin and Norcos, and that's what I was on. And I was on that for a while, and it was causing a lot of problems with my marriage. And I finally went cold turkey after getting caught doctor shopping. I was going back and forth between my insurance and the VA, and they called me, and I went cold turkey for about maybe a year. But I also wasn't doing it martial arts anymore. And so my outlets to deal with that anger, I think that all got turned on my ex-wife. And, unfortunately, and I think a lot of anger verbally, I never physically harmed her, but looking back, I think the verbal abuse that I gave her was probably worse than the physical abuse. I never thought that at the time, because I kept telling myself I would never hit her. Well, heck, I'm a big dude, and she doesn't know that. She doesn't know what's in my heart and my mind. But that being said, so we got divorced about a year later, and then that was probably, or she asked for the divorce a year later or so, and that was probably when I got back on them. I think that's when I made up a complaint or an excuse, to get it from the doctor again, and then it was on, and that was in 2011. I think it started in 2009. So then 2011 is when the divorce started, and then the custody battles. So that made it worse. And that went on until 2019. And it got to the point where I was taking 35 Norcos a day, or 8 to 12 oxy, 30 milligram oxys, usually laced with fentanyl, or combinations of that. And then that led to, especially if I didn't have those Norcos. The Norcos were what worked for me. It was the one thing that got me out of my head and relieved me most of my pain. I would usually take, like I said, between 10 and 13 a day, which, like I said, led up to 35, 10 to 13 at a time, 35, about 35 a day. So I'd do that 2 to 3 times a day, depending on how many I had, which was costing me about $300 on the streets. So after a couple of years, the doctor cut me off. I then was getting him off the streets from quote unquote friends. I found another doctor that I went up and was getting them from, was paying $300, and I'd get 90 from him. They'd be gone within 3 days.
You're spending $100 a day on this habit.
Sometimes up to $300 a day.
So let's back up. In the previous episode, you said that, hey, I've had surgeries on shoulder. I think you had a knee surgery as well, and you were prescribed pain medication then. The difference for those two surgeries and the pain medication and your deep cut on your shin was you didn't have MMA in your life or an outlet that allowed you to breathe, to have an opportunity to heal. And so the drugs, it sounds like, became the way you managed life.
And honestly, you're right. And I'll be honest, I can honestly say drugs saved my life. And if it wasn't for drugs, I think I'm still suffering with all kinds of other addictions and still running my head into the wall and trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And I don't, there's rehab for food addiction, sex addiction, and porn addictions are not usually covered by insurance and are not easy to find or get into, or heck, I also didn't think I had a food addiction. I just thought I was fat. Thought I was lazy. I had all these other terms in my life for myself, but yeah, I am beyond grateful for the drugs and for the rehab, because it did save my life. And the other difference, I believe, I've been prescribed Norcos twice for my 2 knee surgeries. Maybe for when I fractured my collarbone, but I don't think so. And so when I was prescribed those 2 things, I think I was in a much better place in my life as well, like my mental health. And so when I got prescribed in this time, all of a sudden, all my pain, my worries, all the thoughts, the would'ves, the could'ves, the should'ves, the regrets, the guilt, the shame in my head, all, I wouldn't say went away, but it kind of disappeared, or at least dissipated. And I that was probably the best I'd felt since I was probably 16. I take it back. It might have been the best I'd ever felt, because I'd get home from work after a 14-hour shift. I'd pop, 1, maybe 1.5. And all of a sudden I was able to get on the ground and play with my kids again. And I was able to do things. I had energy, and I'd wake up in the morning, I'd pop one, and it wasn't like caffeine. I was awake and ready for the rest of the day. Most of my pain in my back and my hip and my knee and my shoulders went away, and I felt great, ready to tackle the world.
So help me out on terminology here. When you say Norco, specifically, what are we talking about?
So the hydrocodones, so they're 10 milligram hydrocodones with 325 milligrams of acetaminophen or Tylenol. So that was my favorite. It's also known as Vicodin. That's the other brand name. Oxycontin, the 30 milligram, that's oxycodone, or falls under that, and that's pure. There's no Tylenol on that. So that, I was getting to the point where I was doing lines of that, and I overdosed with my kids in a Motel 6, doing the line of that. I'll be honest, I'm proud to say that. I'm proud to. Every one of these stories that I'm about to talk about, as well as everything I'm talking about, I'm proud of all those moments. They were despicable and they were disgusting at the time, but I know I was in a very, very dark place, which led me to all those things. And the fact that I'm out of that, to me, is a miracle. And I never thought I was getting out of those places. Never mind the weight, never mind the Lyme disease. It was just, I remember laying in that bed, especially if I didn't have my pills, for 2, 3, 4 days without showering. Getting maybe food delivered if I had some money, or maybe walking across the street to the Wendy's or whatever, or heck, stealing, because that it ended up becoming my other problem. Again, like I said, a cop, a Marine, I had morals and ethics, but those drugs started leading to bad things. As a cop, I was stealing pills from people's houses while on call. I was stealing tramadols. That was another drug from the dogs I worked with. I was stealing electronics from stores. My guesstimate is over $100,000. I stole and again, these were things I would never have done in the past, but this need for these pills and these drugs was so my body was shaking, saying, you have to. And I remember there'd be times I'd be driving to go meet somebody that had the pills, or heck, meet some woman that I was cheating my ex with, and yelling at myself, turn off, turn around, pull over. And it got to the point where I would just say, you know what, just roll the car, just drive off the side of the road and go into that car. And my body was just literally shake. And mind you, we could say that I'm weak-minded because I didn't know how to overcome it.
Well, I mean, you certainly weren't equipped by anything you had experienced in life
Not
so
at all.
far. And as far as you knew before the addiction started, you never could imagine yourself in that situation.
I used to walk around bragging and patting myself on the shoulder that, I don't have, an addictive mentality. I can go to the casinos and play for a couple hours and leave. I can drink, just one day this month. But everything I did was in excess. So if I drank, on a Friday night, I wasn't drinking one drink. It was 10 or 15. I was drinking for the effect. I was drinking to get buzzed or drunk, to forget my problems, or to be more active or more social. And the same with so many other things. I just had so much pain and trauma inside me that I don't know how to deal with it. And sports, wrestling especially, and martial arts, it was another thing that saved my life. But once with that deep cut and getting off those drugs and not, it got even darker and it led me right back to the drugs.
So when you went cold turkey for a time, what drugs had you been taking before that? Norcos?
So that was just the Norcos I was just taking. So I was on the Norcos for probably about a year. I went cold turkey, and that took. I was in withdrawals for probably about 5 or 6 days. Like more like flu-like symptom for 4 or 5 days, and then for the next 2 months, I had stomach issues, like severe stomach issues, because I had stomach problems probably since 5th grade, which I believe is from stress. So after that, it took me about 2 or 3 months for my stomach to even become, because it just was I was either severely constipated, or diarrhea, or back and forth. And so once I got back on it, that was one of my biggest fears, was those withdrawals, which is also what kept me on them for so much longer.
Yeah. And so when you're not cold turkey anymore, you start using again, you're using Norcos, Oxycontin, and fentanyl. And did you know that, was it Oxycontin that was laced with fentanyl?
Yeah. I had already messed with fentanyl before. I'd gotten some strips that I used to chew on. Like I said, when I couldn't get a hold of my Norcos, it was anything to get me out of my head. Gabapentin, cold medicines, tramadol, codeine, or Tylenol codeine. Heck, I went to the dentist 2 or 3 times just to get pills. And one of those times I had them yank a tooth out. I don't know if it was a good tooth or not. I think there might have been some problems, but probably could have taken a fill in and it would have been fine. But I was like, no, just pull it. And just so I can get 10 Norcos.
And those 10 Norcos would last you how long?
That was at that time, that was just one, so I'd pop all those at one time.
So at your height of, like, I don't know how else to phrase this, the volume of drugs you were putting in your system, it sounds like, and it sounds like you were using prescribed drugs. I would call them semi-prescribed drugs because you were doctor shopping, right? And that's not completely legit. You didn't just come from knee surgery or something. And then you've got what's illegal. It sounds like you're taking 5 to 10x of what you should have been taking, if you can get to a place where, yes, it's fine to be taking these things, which obviously it wasn't for most of your time with your addiction, right? Yeah.
And that's funny you bring that up. That was exactly my thinking was, oh, this is from a doctor. I walked around with that pill bottle like it was the Bible. I'm not joking. I had that ready for anybody. Oh, look, this is prescribed. I'd have like 90 in there, and you could see, if you looked at it for 2 seconds, it would say prescribed 10. And mind you, I'd grab whatever bottle because I carry with me at all times in case I got pulled over, in case this or in case that. But again, at those first couple of years, that's what made me think it was okay. The government prescribed it, a doctor prescribed it. I trusted them. I believed, and mind you, I should have my PhD in all the research that I did, because something told me that it wasn't right, because I didn't feel this was, the symptoms were pretty severe as well. Even while taking them, I was, severely constipated while taking them, and that got worse and worse. And I don't know if we've touched on this, but all that led to just a lot of misery, which led to my homelessness, which led to me losing custody of my kids, which led to me losing everything I own multiple times. And honestly, there's not one thing that I would ever change. I have no regrets. And I know that's hard for my kids to maybe hear, and for my ex, and for even my sister and family members. But the spot I'm in today is absolutely amazing and incredible. And I can't wait to go into that after we get through this part. But that addiction, I didn't think there was any way I was getting out of that hole. It was just so dark down there. And I pushed so many people away. And especially when my mom had cancer, so that situation got much worse once I found out that she had cancer, because that's all I would focus on all day, every day. I'd focus on my mom having cancer, me possibly losing custody of my kids, because we were back and forth in court. And I was just focusing on the negative. I couldn't focus on, I couldn't see a future. I could not see a future at all.
How long were you in that dark hole? After you went cold turkey from the Norcos, but then you started using, it sounds like, a double-digit number of drugs. How long were you in that hole total, you think, roughly?
So I got back on them after the cold turkey, probably in 2011. And then it just slowly progressed from there. The last year was the dark hole after I lost custody of my kids, after I overdosed with them. Heck, even after the rehabs, I was still having trouble. After my second rehab, I got arrested. It was an arrest /5150, where I was fighting 3 firefighters and 2 cops, to the point where they had to sedate me, and they bagged me because I was spitting on them after being sedated. And this was all because I hadn't been sleeping. I had been taking large amounts at this point in time of cold medicine and the Suboxone that I was prescribed. So I'd been off the other pills, but I still was struggling. This is about a little over 4 years ago. And this was right before COVID. So I'm in my head that the CIA is out to get me, and they're tracking me. And I was, going to save all the kids that were being trafficked. And I had just had all these crazy thoughts, to the point where I was actually creating a team. I was writing names down, texting people, and was going to create this team to go save the kids that are being trafficked, by contacting my cousin who used to be a billionaire, and maybe he'd connect me with Bill Gates. It just all these stories in my head. But to go back to your question, most times it was just the Norcos. I didn't want to do anything else but the Norcos. Like, that was what worked the best for me. But when I wasn't using Norcos, then it was all those other stuff. Then it was Adderall, meth, gabapentin, Tylenol, codeine, tramadol. I never went down the heroin route, but fentanyl, weed, like I said, cold medicines. And I was, I stole them from an AIDS victim who had, a girl that I had dated a year prior. She called me up, let me know that she had it, I need to get tested. So then after I found out that I was negative, I went to go see her to, check on her, but with deep in my back of my head, thinking that she probably had some pills that I could get a hold of. And she called me on it, called me out on it. I went off on her, but there's not many things I wouldn't have done for those pills. And if I would have stayed on them, it would have just got worse and worse.
And you mentioned CAAs earlier. What is that?
CAAs?
Yeah, maybe I misheard you. Yeah. Well, all right. So forget that. I'll figure it out when I listen to this the second time. Okay. Do you have a cousin who used to be a billionaire, or was that manufactured?
No. He was the second wealthiest person in Texas. In the top, couple hundred wealthiest in the U.S. and the world. He's big in oil, and so the only reason why he's not anymore, to my knowledge, is because the divorce, which I don't think I think they stayed together. But great guy, and so that was my theory on I was going to contact him and ask if I could intern for him or something like that. And
it sounds like you had gotten to a place where you didn't know which way was up. You were out of your mind most of the time.
oh yeah, I remember I was in, I think my second sober living. I remember crying like a baby, walking down the street, begging my mom to come, move in with her. She was living with my aunt and uncle in Texas, and I know she was, and I just didn't. I had no place to go in a sense. So like I wanted to go home. That's what I kept telling myself. I just wanted to go home, but then I kept realizing I don't have a home, and so my mom said yes that night, and then the next day the story changed. My sister, calls me and she's like, "No, you can't go there." She's like, why would you even ask that? But at the same time, my sister, my mom, nobody really understood the pain that I was in because I didn't share with them the pain that I was really in. And heck, I don't think I realized how much pain I really was in either.
It sounded like you had no concept for how to even begin to help yourself.
Not at all. People would give me advice, and I look back and I remember a lot of the advice that I was given, and it makes sense now. It makes perfect sense now, but at the time, it didn't. And I felt like I tried it. And again, I think we've talked about this. I was a personal trainer with, not only a lot of background in health and fitness, but a lot of research. Like that was something I really enjoyed looking into and reading about, and for myself, for other people, on all aspects of it, but not necessarily the mental health aspect, more so the fitness and the nutrition aspect, which again, even those things, I realized I went down a lot of the unhealthier paths.
So people are giving you what is really useful advice, but looking back at it, but in the moment, you're like, this doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
And it sounds like rehab the first time, or maybe the first two times, really didn't get you down the path that you eventually found. Looking back at it, those people that had wise things to say, could they have said it differently, or maybe chopped it up into smaller increments for next steps sort of thing? Or you just think you had to go through the journey you went through to get to where you are today, and it is what it is?
So that's a great question. So first off, I do want to say, before we get to that, preempt it with, I have so many people to thank, because if it wasn't for those people gave me advice that led me down this path and led me down that path, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And my sister, my mom, my ex, my kids, Clint, Joey, my buddy Josh. I didn't even want to start, because there's just so many people that have helped me so many different ways, and I'm so beyond grateful to all of them. My good friend and client Marnie, my cousin Sharon, my cousin Michelle, my Aunt Julie. People that sent me money, people that gave me advice. But to be honest, no, there's nothing they could have said. They couldn't have said it differently. They couldn't have. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. Mind you, I didn't know that or understand that at the time, but I can see that now with the clients I work with. You have to be ready. And Clint was the one who helped me teach that. He turned me on to Jim Rohn, who was Tony Robbins' mentor, and I'm now a huge Jim Rohn fan. And when he was talking more so about the sales aspect, about knowing that person that's ready to commit, and that sales aspect also falls into place with everything else in life. And I just, again, wasn't ready. You could have banged me on the head, and because I had to hit many, many rock bottoms, and the rehabs, they were great. They were phenomenal. The first one I did 45. I did a 3-day detox, medical detox, then 45 days in the lighthouse up in Anaheim, and that was amazing. I still talk to a couple of the staff there, and a couple of people I went to that I went through it with. And then about a month or two later, I went out to New York to go, quote unquote, help out my aunt who had some medical issues, and I stole pills from her. And then she caught me, and I gaslighted the heck out of her, which is something I realized I did a lot, especially to my ex-wife. And I turned it around. No, yeah. I didn't touch it. It was him.
Gaslighting is, hey, what you think is reality is not reality. I'm going to tell you what reality is, and I'm going to keep talking about it until you believe what I'm saying.
Yes, and you know what? I did that with my ex all the time. She'd catch me on my phone. She'd go on my phone, and I turn it around at her and say, "What are you going through my phone? You don't trust me?" And multiple times, just because, again, that was another dopamine fix. That me talking to other women and me doing all those things, and the disrespect that I gave towards her. she was a phenomenal woman, an amazing mother. She really was. I look back at the sacrifices that she made for our children. Were absolutely amazing. The rehabs helped immensely. The second rehab, I went out to New York. The gaslighting, we were talking about that.
Yeah,
so my aunt caught me. Like I said, I left. I ended up just assuming that my friends that, in my hometown that lived 45 minutes away, somebody would let me crash there. And I called them, was very beating around the bush about it. And nobody said yes. And so then I called the VA and they put me into a homeless shelter in Peekskill, New York. And I was there for, I think, 2 weeks, and then got into the VA's what's called domicile program. I was there for 5 months, and all those helped a lot. They really did. And that's when I was diagnosed with the Lyme, probably a month into that. And came back, was another sober living. And then after that, to get a little bit off track, but, not to get off track, but those rehabs did phenomenal things, and they really helped me a lot. But I just still had some internal wounds, some childhood trauma, some other trauma that I hadn't dealt with, hadn't recognized. A lot of shadow work, I guess you could call it.
So rehab helped in some ways, but it didn't fully allow you to be where you are now. Would you say that the addiction was, and it sounds like based on how you just described it, it was mostly an emotional addiction versus a physical addiction? You weren't, post rehab, you weren't physically addicted anymore. It was more of an emotional attachment.
Yeah, probably it was just to get out of my head. I overdosed a couple more times. Like that one story about being arrested at 7-Eleven. Like I said, ended up being a 150. About a week before that, it was 3 a.m. or 1 a.m. our time, excuse me. And I'm watching TV, and all of a sudden I'm watching Animal Kingdom, and everything they're saying seems like it's backwards. Or mind you, I had taken a second dose of either triple C's or Robitussin, probably about 6 hours after the last dose, which on top of not really sleeping very much. And the next thing I know, I felt like my body was shut down, and I felt like I was overheating. And I run into the shower, fully clothed, put it on freezing cold water, and it's just getting worse. And I swear that I'm dying. I've convinced myself I'm dying. I beg my roommates to call. I'm in a sober living. I beg my roommates to call 911. They're like, "Bro, you're fine. You're like, what are you talking?" I'm like, "No, I'm dying." And I couldn't really talk. I couldn't catch my breath. I was very. And then they got my phone. I actually called my ex-wife at first to say goodbye to my kids, and I hung up after the second ring. And then I called my mom, who again is battling cancer, at 3 a.m. her time. And I called her crying and say, "Mom, I just want to say bye. I love you. I'm dying. I think I took too much drugs, and thankfully the paramedics got there a couple minutes later. They talked her down, but she's like, "What are you talking about? You're fine. You're fine." I'm like, "No, Mom, I'm dying. These are my last words. I want to tell you how much I love you." And so I got hospitalized that time as well for a day or two. But yeah, it was still a struggle because I hadn't dealt with the reasons behind why I was doing these drugs and why I was addicted to all these things, which was these unhealed traumas, all these damage that had happened to me, me not feeling worthy, me not feeling loved, all these other things that I felt. But then on top of that, me not loving myself and just absolutely hating myself still.
Yeah, so I'm guessing rehab tried to get at a lot of those causes, and they may have gotten to some of the causes, but they didn't get to all of them because your situation, your addiction is unique. There was nothing like it on earth, and I'm guessing one stint in rehab obviously didn't find all of the things that were causing.
Well, so one thing I want to say about that, Paul, is this: I could have went back to who I was before the drug addiction. I could have, I could have went and got an apartment got a job, which I had a couple opportunities for jobs. I could have went and got a job, made some decent money. And those are routes that I was looking into when I was going down, get back into fitness, things of that nature, got an apartment, got a house. And then and been okay. But I would have been able to survive and live within society, but I wouldn't be anywhere near where I'm at today, which took another basically 3 years of just a lot of work and a lot of discipline.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a bit. The VA part, it sounds like you have a positive view of the VA.
I didn't for a long time, especially out here. And one of the things I finally realized is out here, they're just, in my opinion, just overwhelmed. There's just way too many military and not enough nurses, doctors. And so when I went to them first, before my first rehab, they told me I'd have to come back for a week later just for the basically initial consultation. And I kept telling them, I'm like, if I leave here, I'm going to get more pills. And they're like, well, good luck, and so, and then I think it was 2 days later, I called Kaiser and my insurance and got in through there with the help of some friends. And but yeah, the VA has has done great things for me. And can there be improvements? Oh, of course. I think it can be improvements everywhere, and I'm not going to bag them because at the end of the day, they helped me immensely.
Yeah, I don't want to get into politics in California. And you're right. There are a lot of military folks that are out in California, a lot of Marines, a lot of Navy. And yeah, I'm guessing the VA is overwhelmed in certain parts of the country, and California is certainly one of them.
And yeah, and then in upstate New York, I think it was a lot less, and so I had an offer to get an apartment out there within about 3 months, and they would have paid for it for the first year. They were going to expedite it. And I was like, no, I need to get back to California because I quote unquote needed to go take care of my kids. And the biggest thing I've realized with all this was I wasn't taking care of me. I wasn't filling up my cup. I was filling up everybody else's cup as a Marine, as a cop, as a father, as a son, as a everything. I was trying to be everybody's everything except for me. And that's the one thing I do every day now is I make sure my cup is full. And so that my overflow can help everybody else out. And now I help out, like I said, we'll talk more about it later, but now I go out of my way to help out people that are going through this, as well as the homeless and people going through addiction and other situations. And this is my life's purpose now. And yeah, there's still some struggles, but it doesn't push me back to where I was. I now know that if I get overwhelmed by this person's story or this person's, life or whatever they're going on, rather than immersing myself in that, I can take a step out, take some deep breaths, refocus, and continue on.
Your cup's been full for a while, right? And you have to work at it. It's a daily thing that you have to work at. But I think you've gotten like early mid-morning, your cup is full, and you're ready to help other people, and it's probably therapeutic for you.
Oh gosh, it saved my life.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Rich. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so after that second rehab, I'm in sober living, and I meet a great woman off a dating site. We kind of move a little bit fast because I'm getting kicked out of the sober living / voluntarily leaving because for many reasons, and within my head mostly. And so I move in with her. I live with her for 11 months. I pick up another addiction, Kratom, which is a supplement that you can buy over the counter. And I was just taking large doses of that. And that became a bit of but again, my health journey really, started continuing there. I started changing my diet, and she was very helpful on many routes. But at the same time, I was still in my head about so many things. And, the last couple of months we're together, I get this job out in Orange County. And I don't know if you want to go on to that now, but that was a very interesting chapter in my life as well.
Well, before we go to Orange County, how many times do you think you overdosed?
I guess it really depends on what, I used to only say that one time at the motel, but, I'd have to say at least, that time in the 7-Eleven, the time in this sober living. There was another time that I was at a VA sponsored event where I took some pills and woke up on the floor in a bathroom stall, I think an hour or two later. So I kind of think that might have been an overdose, because I really don't remember it. It wasn't like I took it and got drowsy and fell asleep. I remember sitting on, on the toilet seat and then, waking up like an hour or so later.
So it sounds like a
4 or
form of
5.
overdose. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of overdoses, Rich.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then the one, when I was in the motel that led to pneumonia and I was hospitalized for, I think 3 or 4 days and put on oxygen. That as well was also probably my 3rd or 4th time getting pneumonia in that last year and a half of my addiction. So my physical health was really deteriorating, in so many ways, multiple, cases of pneumonia, multiple cases of just illnesses and sicknesses on top of my body falling apart. It got to the point where I couldn't do one push-up. I couldn't hang from a pull-up bar. So my ego is also going nuts now, trying to figure out who the heck I am now, because I've always been this big, strong man now, and I can't even push myself off the ground or lift myself off the ground. And that, again, drew me back into a deeper hole.
All right, let's talk about Orange County. And you still were addicted for this part of your life?
So, in a different way, you know what I mean? And mind you, none of these things I considered addictions anymore because I wasn't in the hole I was before. You know what I mean? I was pretty proud of myself. I was off those Norcos, and the addictions were, stuff that was over the counter, things of that nature. And so yeah, I get a job working security for doing underground poker games, and this is in the middle of COVID. And so I get that job, and again, mind you, I'm a cop, and so mind you, I didn't consider it an underground poker game. It was just in people's homes, and they were very nice homes and penthouses and mansions and things of that nature. And I was pretty proud of myself because I was making a lot of money. I was patting myself on the back. After the ex and I broke up, I ended up moving out to Orange County, and I basically start staying where we're running the games, in this penthouse in Irvine. And so now I'm working the games, and I'm living in a penthouse. I got pockets full of money. And I got a car, and I'll be honest, I'll pat myself on the back because I'm like, oh, excuse me, take that back. Let me rewind. I'm doing this job out there, doing the security, and I'm with my ex. I go to work, come back, and that's it. You know what I mean? And I'm making money. I'm saving money. I'm about to buy a car. Everything's going real great in my mind. I'm gonna, I think within a couple months, I saved up quite a few thousand. I'm doing really, real good, and things are great. And so I decide to go visit my mom in April of 2021. And so I go visit my mom, and while I'm there, basically a week and a half after I'm there, she passes away. And I didn't go there for her. She had cancer, but I wasn't going there to say goodbye. I was there. I was honestly contemplating moving there. I had brought everything that I thought I needed in case I decided that. I was contemplating looking at apartments because the ex and I were kind of butting heads on some things and not seeing eye to eye about some stuff. And so my mom, got an infection and the passing. And so again, another deep hole, dark hole. I don't really remember much of the next 3 days. I remember staying we were in an Airbnb, and I remember staying in that room for 3 days. I think the second day I finally came out for dinner. The third day it came out for lunch. And I think the 4th or 5th day, my sister, my aunt comes in and is like, hey, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. What's your plans? And my mom had left me her car. So now I have this car that I need to drive back to California or come get, and so I ended up driving it back, and it ended up being one of the most healing things ever, driving it back by myself. And so I get back to Orange County, and my buddy that I was working with, all of a sudden he's like, hey man, it's on, and starts telling me some stories about what's been happening. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm getting not addicted, but involved with Coke, Adderall, and the girls there, the girls that I'm working with, and other girls, getting massages and again, spending this money, not buying lavish things or anything like that, but I'm spending the money on other things. in a sense. And so I was patting myself on the back, walking around. I'm like, I got this. You know what I mean? You know, it's been a couple months. My mom passed away. I got money in my pocket, a car. I'm living in a penthouse. But all those things didn't make me happy at all, especially on the days that I wasn't with anybody or didn't have my friends around. And I didn't know many people up there. So that was the other problem. But I had some huge highs there, but some drastic lows. And like I said, I really thought I was doing good because I didn't have to do it every day, but the hours I was working 12, 14, 16-hour shifts, usually getting off at 6, 8, 9, 10 in the morning, only sleeping a couple hours. And then, I need something to wake me back up again. And then back to that. And then there'd be 3 days where I didn't leave the room or maybe I'd go get a motel and I'd stay there for 3 days or 2 days or whatever. And so I had some great experiences, but also some really big highs, some really lows. And I end up crashing my car, under the influence. And another woman that saved my life, she was the second person that passed the incident after I totaled my car on the 405. I get out of the car and I'm trying to clean up all the dirt that's now covered the exit lane because I nailed one of those yellow barrels that are filled with water or dirt because it was a construction area, and I nailed that head on. But I'll be honest, because I was in the influence, I think that's what saved my life. And I got out and I look at the car won't start. Second person, she pulls over, she asked me if I'm okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. She's like, you sure? I said, oh, I'm fine. She's like, have you been drinking? I said, no. And well, I'd been up for the last night. I've been up since this is at 1 PM on a Saturday. I've been up since the day before. Well, I'd been up since the 2 nights before, but I've been partying since about 2 PM the day before. But I wasn't drinking. I was smoking weed, maybe doing a little bit of coke. And so I didn't think, but then she's like, are you sure? She's like, I smell it on you. She's like, I'm not trying to judge. And then I'm like, oh crap. I just had 2 White Claws right before I left because I wasn't planning on leaving, but I was going to deliver some coke to somebody, one of my clients. And so I said, yeah, I have. And she's like, I know you don't know me. I know you don't trust me. You have no reason to, but just do me a favor, go grab your stuff, get my car, and I'll take you wherever you need to go. And for some reason I didn't hesitate. And if it wasn't for her, I would have sat there and waited for the cops to come. And I would have arrogantly thought I was fine until I was in handcuffs and in jail, because in my backpack, I also had, probably a decent amount of coke and Adderall. I might have had my unregistered gun. And I was under the influence of at least 3 or 4 different substances.
So this is now roughly mid 21.
Yep.
You've been
22.
Mid 22.
Late 21 probably.
Late 21. You're still clearly battling some demons, and you're self-medicating in some ways. But you've been clean now for how long?
At that point in time, clean from the Norcos for almost 2 years.
Okay.
And so
you're in a really good place now. How long would you say you've been in that good place?
Oh, right now? Oh, you're speaking of right now?
Yeah.
Well, before we get to right now, just to finish off Orange County, that you would have thought would have been a rock bottom for me to get out of there, and that wasn't. I went back into that lifestyle for another month or 2, or a month and a half. And the last day I was up there, I was involved in a home invasion where 3 guys came in with guns to rob the place. Normally I would have been working, but the game had been called early. We didn't have enough people there. Another game had started up. It was just a friendly game. So I was downstairs trying to sleep because I had a jiu-jitsu tournament 2 weeks prior. And at this point in time, this month and a half, I've really been diving deep into my shadow work, and I was doing a lot of healing. I was getting real healthy. Physically, I was in the best shape of my life. I was fasting. I was eating real clean, organic. And so this home invasion was, that was what spilled it over, especially when I found out that they were quote unquote looking for me. And yeah, I think the reason why they were looking for me is because they knew that I did security there. And so I think either they wanted to either take care of me or just make sure that I wasn't going to cause a problem. But long story short, as I was downstairs, I just heard some commotion, and it was just a lot of loud noise up there. I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea. And I remember knowing that my gun was 12 feet away. And I remember going through all the thoughts in my head, probably within 30 seconds, if I would have grabbed my gun, go upstairs. And mind you, I have no idea what's going on. But one of my thoughts is that, somebody was stealing from, it was just a fight. And some of the people I knew up there were heavy hitters. And I'm like, do I walk into, a situation where there's 8 people that I don't know, and I knew a couple of them, but something just said, grab your bags, which were at the end of my bed, and get out of there. And like I said, I remember going through all the thought process in my head. If I grab my gun, if I go upstairs, the stairway, would leave me open. If, or if I propped up at my door, I was thinking about how I had sliding glass doors behind me and on the side of me, and all the rooms had sliding glass doors, so somebody could come behind me. And I don't even know why I was thinking about all these things. And so I just grabbed my bags and left. And I called as I'm leaving, I see smoke coming out, and I get a little ways away. I see everybody in the house running and fleeing for their lives. I call 911, and not till about 3 or 4 hours later do I find out what actually happened. And my roommate and I, we went up to Big Bear to get away from the situation, because I'll be honest, I thought they were going to arrest me because of my gun. I left my gun there. Well, it wasn't registered to me, so I was worried that was going to come back, all these other things. So we go to Big Bear for a couple days, and when we come back, I was like, I'm done. Well, somebody robbed the place, and that's what I was like, I'm done. And I left, and I came down to Oceanside, and I've like I said, done some very, very drastic things to change my life.
So I was going to ask you, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you how long you've been in this great place, and what sparked you to begin that journey of healing. And you just answered it for me. So I appreciate you anticipating my question.
So yeah, it kind of started when I was in Huntington Beach, probably about, obviously it'd been going on for a while, but I really was diving deeper into it and really getting some answers when I was in Huntington Beach. I finally felt like I was in a safe place. It was the first place that I unpacked my stuff the first day that I was there. But I was only there for a month. And then I came down here, back down to San Diego County, Oceanside. I came back down in August of last year. And from then on is when, like I said, really started making some very drastic changes in my life, with just everything.
Well, what were those drastic changes?
Basically just giving up almost everything else in my life. So right now it's been about a little over a year since I've watched any porn, masturbated, had sex, or even dated a woman. Dated a woman. We'll say that. My living situation, I was living in a motel, motels when I first came back down here. Then I bought a car and I started sleeping in my car down by the beach. That car broke down, and then now I'm borrowing a car from my boss. And most times I usually sleep in my car down by the beach. He lets me sleep upstairs at the gym, but most times I don't. I have a client that lets me stay at an Airbnb, and I'll take her up on that, on occasion, once a month or two. But honestly, I prefer to sleep in my car because of many, many reasons. I've changed my diet. I've changed my habits. I've changed my lifestyle. Like I said, I make it a priority to fill up my cup first, so that I can then, with the overflow, fill up everybody else's. I try my hardest never to take any pay for anything. Most of my clients I train for absolutely free. The only money that, when I do get money, I spend it on gas and food. Where I'm working at now with the martial arts, I made a deal with him where he puts money on a card for me to take care of food, and then the rest of my pay takes care of a couple clients of mine whose kids train there, so because they used to be homeless, so they don't have to pay. And I try not to consume anything more than what I need. And there's still a lot of things I need to work on, but I finally found peace. And Huntington Beach is where I first noticed that I found this peace, and I realized that that's what I'd been seeking. I thought I'd been seeking happiness and all these other things. And then when this peace rushed over me, that's when I realized that that's what I've been seeking the entire time.
It was right there the whole time, man.
The whole time.
It's so hard for people to even recognize that that's probably the answer.
And Paul, I'm not joking when I say that the idea of that never even crossed my mind. Peace. But again, regularly, daily, I do breath work. I do meditation. I'm always out in nature, in the sun. These are things that I didn't do for a long, 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 long time. And if I did do them, it was, very, very inconsistent. And it was never for that purpose. The intention wasn't there. Whereas every day I make sure I get sun. Every day I make sure that I'm out within nature. Every day I make sure I'm doing some deep breathing, deep breath work, stretching, fitness. Each and every day I make sure, that I'm, again, disciplining myself.
And that sounds like that's the majority of the answer for how you fill your cup up each day.
Oh, yes. And with that being said, I haven't been sick in a little over 2 years. I haven't been injured in more than that. And mind you, the ailments that I have a list, almost a page long, of ailments that I used to go through: stomach problems, a tear in my abdominal wall that I never, got surgically fixed, arthritis, scoliosis, degenerative disc disorder, arthritis in my knee and my shoulder and my back, Lyme disease, and just, again, a laundry list. And I don't have symptoms of any of those things anymore. I have some tightness and muscle imbalances still in my body from all the injuries and all the trauma that I'm still working on. But now I can hang from a pull-up. I can do multiple pull-ups again. I can do push-ups again. I'm working on getting my black belt in karate, which is scheduled probably for June. I'm learning Spanish and Japanese. I'm reading the Bible. I'm learning, and it's not even that I'm reading the Bible. I'm learning the Bible because I've read the Bible before and it just never made sense to me. And honestly, the Bible, more so the connection with Jesus, is really what helped me with all these other new age holistic health practices. And then I started seeing how they related with Jesus and what the Bible said, especially when it comes to breath work and fasting and healing. And that really, I guess, exploded me forward.
Yes. Can you imagine being better from a mental, physical health? Maybe you can improve a bit, but it sounds like you're in a really good spot with your physical health. And can you imagine your mental health being better?
Oh, every day I know that I'm getting better and better and strong. Like my flexibility, I'm almost at full splits, which I've never even came close to that. Every one of my, I plan on taking my body as far as is possibly, able to go. I plan on being able to teach myself how to do backflips, front flips. I'm probably the fastest I've ever been. But I take it back. I know I'm the fastest I've ever been, whether it's in a sprint or in distance. My injuries are going away. My injuries are gone. I still have some disfigurements, such as a bunion in my toe that's, very crooked, which I'm sure is, caused a lot of my, again, misalignment throughout my body. But there's still a lot of things I need to work on. There's still a lot of, but I know that will come as and I finally have faith in myself. That's what I never had, Paul. I never had that peace. I never had that faith in myself, because now I know that someday, somehow, I will be together with all three of my boys. I even believe that I'll have a relationship with my ex-wife again one day, and even her husband, who I'm sure still hates me, rightfully so, as well as her family and all these other people that I hurt, because I know where my heart is. I know where my intention's at, and I truly believe, somehow, some way, especially if I release myself of the expectations of the who, when, where, what, why, and how, and just know that it will happen someday.
Yeah, I've only known you for a few months now. Your story of dark places, not understanding what was entirely driving that for most of your life, but to know you for the last few months, I'm like, there's no way you went through all that. But you said it, like, I had to go through all of that to get to where I am now.
And you know what? That's why I'm so grateful for it, because all the things that I thought were gibberish, grounding, breath work, meditation, fasting, all this holistic mumbo jumbo, I didn't believe, chakras, things of that nature. They're all the same. I know the Bible and religious calls it prayer and other things, and then yoga calls it this, and then this religion calls it that, and everybody's they're all the same thing. And I think we're all arguing over the differences rather than focusing on the similarities. And if we focus on the similarities, which is what I started doing, that's when my life became so much more peaceful, because I used to love to argue. And if you ask Sharon that, she'll won't even hesitate. That was probably one of my biggest pastimes. I would argue with my mom, my sister, my ex, my cousin, anybody online that even, I would seek out arguments.
Were those dopamine hits?
Yeah. And again, that misery loves company idea.
Yeah. So Rich, I'm ecstatic that you are where you are. I wish you nothing but the best. And let's end with this. If there are people that are struggling, well, let me make another comment. The fact that you get so much, pleasure is not the right word, but fulfillment from helping other people is infinitely more valuable than you actually receiving payment the way we would think of about a payment. You get money for your services sort of thing. You've become non-transactional. It's not a this for that thing anymore. You literally just want to help people, and you got to fill your cup up first. You help yourself, and then you help other people. I can't imagine myself being at that place. I can't imagine 99% of humanity, but I think you found your version of nirvana, man.
It's honestly, like I'll be honest, and I have a lot of theories, but I truly believe that heaven and hell is right here on earth. And I truly believe where I was living before was definitely hell, and where I'm living, now is heaven. And if the way I read the Bible says the exact same thing. I believe that's what Jesus was saying, is that the kingdom is within us, and the kingdom is upon us. And I think that what that means is right now. And I think it's a mindset. I truly, truly, wholeheartedly believe that. And the transactional comment that you made, I use that a lot, because I realized every relationship I had before was transactional. It was, I'll do this for you. What are you going to do for me? And even if it wasn't straight up, okay, I'll do this for you, but in 3 months, I'll remember, I'll come back and ask for that in return, or whatever the case may be. And that's, that's not why I'm doing it now. I'm doing it because I remember how much pain I was in, how much suffering I was in, and how miserable that was. And the fact that I'm at where I'm at, I would feel horrendous if I didn't give back, if I didn't share my story. And that's my purpose now, is to share my story and to walk with people on their path, not to force them onto my path, not to force them onto A's path or a religious path, or walk with them on their path. I have clients that have called me, that are trying to get sober, that have called me, asked me for money, or asked me for booze, and I'll go buy it for them. And I want to meet them where they're at, rather than trying to force them to be something that I want them to be. And so I just try to be there to love them and care for them, and show them that I understand, and that I can and walk with them, and I guess do the best that I can.
I mean, I think we've touched on several lessons learned throughout this conversation and the prior to, but if you could boil it down into the biggest lesson you've learned, based on the journey that we've tried to articulate through these 3 recordings, what would you say the biggest lesson learned is?
I think the biggest lesson to learn is every one of our goal should be to heal ourselves, to heal our inner and outer wounds, and be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And then from there, that light can then shine outwards. And I think that's what changes the world. I think if each individual works on themselves, because again, like I said, nobody could have helped me get sober unless I was ready to get sober.
Awesome. Rich, I know from since the last recording, you were really looking forward to this, because I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you thought this would be the most important conversation, because you would be the most laid bare, the most vulnerable, and really sort of say, hey, here's the crux of my journey through very painful things to a much, much better place where I'm helping other people in really powerful ways. And so I hope this has done what you had hoped it would do. And let me ask you this. Anything else you want to touch on?
I guess a big thank you to you and to anybody listening, as well as to everybody that helped me on this journey. And like I said, I listed a couple names, but God, my mom, my sister did so much to help. And just, again, I almost don't want to say anybody's name, but again, I had so many mentors, people that I've never even met, such as Joe Rogan, the Sad Guru, and Jay Shetty, and Jordan Peterson, and all kinds of just, different philosophies. And I just, I think we all need to fill up our cup. And if we all fill up our cup and find peace within, then that will then extend outward.
I think we're going to leave it at that, Rich. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Paul.
I've learned a ton from these conversations, and I've said it before, but I'm very happy you are where you are now, man.
And I thank you for that. And I just want to say, I guess I'm going to take it one step further. I think love is the answer. I think that's what Jesus was trying to tell us, was that love was the answer. I think Jesus was trying to tell us how to live. And if we just love everybody and everything in ourselves, then that will shine outwards. And that was something that I couldn't do until about a year ago, was look in the mirror and tell myself, I love you. And it wasn't even that I didn't love me now. It was all the different other versions of myself that I didn't love. And now I can truly say that I do love every version of myself. I forgive every version of myself. And I know that I'm just going to continue to move forward. I'm going to continue to heal, not let my past burden me or hold me back, learn from it and move on.
Beautiful. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.